Welcome to the Babes Talking Business podcast, the space where female entrepreneurs are elevated and celebrated with your hosts, Chani Thompson and Lauren Kerr.
We're two best friends with over 10 years in business, a global impact and community of thousands. We've talked on stages around the world and have recently navigated the evolution of maiden to mother together. We're here to share the advice, the lessons, and the laughs along the way.
And we're inviting you to sit at the table and be in the room with women who are making bold moves, backing themselves, and showing you what's also available for you. Okay, we are here with Nikki. Hello, my love. Thank you so much for jumping on BTB.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
I am really excited about this conversation because, as I was saying to you before we started recording, we've actually never had someone like in the PR marketing space on the podcast. So I have lots of questions about that. But before we dive into any of the goodness, I would love for you to share a little bit about you for those who don't know about your business journey and who you are and what you do. Maybe share a little bit about where you've come from, because we both think, Loz and I think it's phenomenal, like your business journey and what we've read and seen so far, but let our audience know a little bit too.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've got quite a colorful story, you might say. I was quite young, obviously not a huge fan of school. I actually really struggled at school, just wasn't interesting to me. So my attention span was quite limited. So by year 11, I dropped out of high school and went on to start a hairdressing apprenticeship. I grew up in a country town, so careers were very limited. You generally ended up being a hairdresser or working at one of the local boutiques. So I did a hairdressing apprenticeship and then took off for traveling Australia, where I got to work as a celebrity hairdresser and do a lot of incredible weddings and photo shoots and things. And then at 23, I ended up back in Western Australia, where I originated from. And through a series of interesting events, I ended up being in the position to buy a hairdressing salon in partnership with my parents. They come on board as investors. So we bought this salon, and then it turned out this hiving salon, which cost a fortune in a very expensive suburb in Perth. 1 or 2 weeks in, we learnt that all the staff were actually leaving to go get jobs on mine sites, and there was no clientele left, and basically it was about to be bankrupt. So although our due diligence, it didn't actually pick any of that up, but they were very crafty at hiding it. So about a month later, I was standing there, no staff, $1,000 rent over my head per week. And, I didn't know anyone in this city. My parents returned to the country town we grew up in, and there I was, really having to survive as a 23-year-old as a new business owner. So I was up against it from day one. The salon was also an area where there was 40 other salons, so highly competitive, and I was the new kid on the block with not much background in it. And I looked around, and basically it was a very wealthy suburb with a lot of young children or young teenagers and adults living at home that had a very disposable income. So I just started marketing to them through social media and going to the university down the road and kind of like begging people to come into my salon and give me the opportunity. And generally over the next 8 years, I harnessed everything I knew about marketing and self-educating to learn about marketing and grew it into a really successful salon. It ended up being 2 stories, 13 staff, very, very profitable. And then the arrival of my first child saw me sell the salon.
Amazing. And you have 4 littlies now.
I do have 4 children. So that first child, I went, I can't dedicate time to him and obviously have the salon. And in a salon, you have a lot of teenage staff. So you're dealing a lot with pregnancies, drugs, all sorts of things. And when I had my first child, didn't have the capacity to keep going and give that much energy and time to the people in that salon. So for that reason, I kind of also decided to step away. But I'd obviously always had a passion for business. I'd always had a passion for marketing. But when I sold the salon, I still wanted to work a little bit, but no one was ever going to give me a job in marketing or, PR, because I dropped out of high school. I had zero background in it, and it's a very degree heavy area. So I kind of thought, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to live the career I want to live with no background in it or experience? And yes, I probably could have gone and tried to get into uni to do it, but that, at 30, mum, to go
Wasn't
into
the
that.
season to go
Wasn't
to
no.
uni.
So I actually thought, well, if I can create a community on Instagram, I knew very well then how to manage social media and grow social media. I thought if I can create a platform on social media and prove to everyone I know how to market, and maybe something will come out of it. So about 4 months after my son arrived and the salon had sold, I created an Instagram platform. Again, very last minute. Had this idea, put it straight out within minutes onto social media. And it was a platform for supporting women in small business. So just giving them a platform to show what they do in a wider way. And then I used my marketing and social media skills to grow that account. And within a few months, it had 40,000 people. Then it went to 50,000. Off the back of that, I started a blog, which then became a paid blog. I created a membership. I published a magazine, some books, and it just exploded. And from that, it caught the attention of a global car brand that come to me and said, we love what you're doing. Would you be interested in doing our PR? And I was like, absolutely love to. Sign me up. And then I literally got in the car and I Googled what the hell PR was, because at that point I had no idea. But my whole life I've always said yes and worried about it later. And I thought, well, obviously I must know what PR is because they've come to me. So yeah, I'm so glad I said yes to that and then worked it out later. So it's a bit of advice for anyone listening. Say yes, then you'll work it out, I promise.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I
And
think I read one of your posts too saying that that opportunity wasn't really, was that the one that wasn't very feasible for you? Like
yeah,
monetary wise, it was like really not going to pay you that much, but you decided to say yes anyway, and you still get paid on that job because of the opportunities and
absolutely.
what it's provided for
That was the
you.
start. They had a teeny tiny budget, but I was smart enough to know that brand equity would actually transform me into the next level of marketing PR and put me in the realm of the other big PR and marketing agencies in Perth. So although it was a teeny tiny budget, at that stage I had a lot of contacts from my platform. So I said yes, worked out what PR was, and then went to contacts and said, look, if you could supply perhaps like the picnic rugs, and then if you could supply the balloons, we will give you a shout out on the socials when we credit this event. So I think I had 20 collaborators working on that particular event, and only the budget was $2,000, but this event went viral. It was featured in Japan, it was featured in all these, New York, all these things, because it was
Amazing.
really before the rise of influencers. It was one of the first influencer events really globally. And it was just done on such a great scale with collaborators that, yeah, it just caught so many people's attention. And from that was when I launched my PR agency.
And so maybe explain what PR is for those who don't know, because I feel like a lot of people don't know that this world of public relations
Mm.
exists and how it can really, like, they can leverage off it in their business. So give us a roundabout explanation of what it is, what you do, and how it benefits you as a business owner.
Yeah, so marketing is more something tangible that you can monitor, whereas PR is a lot harder to monitor. And traditionally, people always thought PR was media. But I've kind of turned that on the head, and probably that's why I've been so successful, because I look at it as anything we're doing to form relationships. So that for a business owner might be hosting a workshop. Hosting a podcast is a form of PR. It could be, bringing people together to do something collectively. It could be just creating a community. So anywhere that you're the leader and you're actually bringing together a community to strengthen it and strengthen your brand is actually PR. So many people look down the media, which still has its place, but it's nowhere near as prevalent because we create our own media on social media nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
is actually, I think the biggest trick is getting people off the social media and getting them into your brand. So if you've got a business, you get them into your brand, into your space, into your studio or your hair salon. And then if you're someone that writes a blog or a platform, again, you're getting those people off the digital space, and actually meeting in person is such a powerful PR tactic
Mm.
that we've definitely moved away from, but I can see we're all coming back to, because people are fostering that in-person connection more so than ever.
I agree. I think there's a couple of things that are making people come back to in-person events. Like obviously 2020 was a really big year of like not socializing. And I think people got really comfortable in that. They got very comfortable with Zoom and, being quote unquote stuck in their houses. A lot of people enjoyed that. It was almost like a rest for those of us who
Oh,
have
yeah.
been so like heavily marketing and online and doing all the things, networking. And then I don't know what happened, but we kind of lost our way there. But I believe the reason we're coming back to it is a couple of reasons. The rise in AI,
Mhm.
like I feel like we are in such information overload because we can get information anywhere now. Like I actually even believe that like the online learning space, like e-courses and that, like that's quickly going to fade away because we can literally ask AI to help us learn anything, how to set up a podcast studio, how to anything you can buy a course on. AI can pretty much teach you. But what AI can't do is foster relationships, which people are coming back to. And I agree with you. I believe community and creating relationships in person is going to be the biggest point of difference that businesses today have. Maybe not right now, like it's not going to happen overnight, but I see it coming that people aren't going to pay anymore for your expertise or the information they can learn from you. They're actually going to pay you for the experiences that they can have and feel with you. So that's my little spiel on what I think about in-person
They
events.
say in the course world, they come for the content, but they stay for the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the truth. And that is so much true about the brands as well. The brands that are excelling, and if you look at the big ones like Showpo and all those, they are building community beyond the brand. They're building
Yeah.
podcasts. They're actually, their owners are putting themselves out as a personal brand. So they have absolutely adhered to this strategy we're talking about and doubling down on building that community, because community will long outlast that brand.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah. And so, like, let's just pretend I'm a client of yours with your PR and marketing agency. What are some things you would suggest for me to like get out there and build a personal brand? Like, what type of things do you suggest for your clients?
So basically, when someone comes into the agency, I think because I've been a business owner for 19 years now, I actually audit the whole business. Even though they come to me for PR marketing, the first thing I do is sit down with them and we go through all the pricing and everything. Because you've got to remember, when you put PR onto a business, that is going to generate so many leads. And what happens is a lot of businesses are not set up to cope with that many leads. And then that becomes bad PR. So the first thing we do is order all the business, make sure the pricing's right, the funnels are operating, the packages are on point. And in many times, I will actually almost double the pricing of most of the clients because they're actually undervalued. And when we put PR to a client, it actually increases value
Yeah, that
of
makes
the
sense.
brand.
Yeah.
So we will get all the back end sorted. So generally I spend 2 months auditing the websites, making sure that when we do the PR element, and then when we go to the PR element, we'll also have marketing running alongside it. But the PR will be, yeah, absolutely media outreach followed by an event. So I love events. I think they're so worthwhile. So it might be a launch event. It could be a birthday celebration event. It might just be an event to thank the consumers or clients of that particular business. But whatever we do, we try and get as many people into a room as possible and then introduce the brand again and actually build that in-person connection. And then we're going to follow it on with a really solid marketing campaign after it, just to reinforce that brand and make people feel a part of it again that have perhaps grown distant, or if they're new to the brand, they're going to feel really encompassed by the brand and part of the brand, which obviously amplifies the message way beyond that first event.
Yeah, I love that. Never thought about that. That you could have someone help you create events like that. I'm definitely not an event planner.
Oh,
I
I
suck at
love
it.
events. I love
You
it.
and I need to talk.
Yeah,
Oh, I love
absolutely.
it. Actually, something that Loz and I have been speaking about a little bit is we actually get a lot of PR agencies reach out to us to recommend like someone that they work with to be on the podcast. Um, would you suggest that as well for people to like get their name out there and get on podcasts? Like, do you see podcasts being a successful way to build brand and relationships with others?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. And this is coming, I also have a podcast. So I understand being on the receiving end of it. Personally, I don't recommend for clients to pitch to podcasts. Believe it or not, I didn't pitch to you guys. You found
Yeah,
me
we reached out to you.
and reached out. That is a way stronger relationship. We get pitched to all the time. I'm sure you're the same with podcasts, and they're just paying a PR agent to pitch for them. I don't want to be one of many people getting pitched to podcasts. So I would prefer, from a strategy, if it was my client, I'd say let's build your brand, personal brand, and your brand on social media and through other media platforms, and then wait for these podcasts to come to you, because the good ones will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I judge a quality of a podcast. we're out there outreaching to who we want on our podcast. We're not taking random pictures that are jumping in our inbox. I don't know about you, but I've never once taken a random
No.
podcast pitch that jumps into my podcast. I'm like, instant delete. Sorry.
This is so refreshing because I actually do have a bone to pick. And it was going to be the next thing that I was going to say. Like, Loz and I get all these pictures and we get so frustrated with them because I feel like they're so disingenuous. Like they'll say, I'm introducing my client such and such, this spiel about them. And then we go to have a look at their page and have a look at who they are. And they're not even following us. Like they have no idea who we even are. And it just feels really like just not genuine. And it's upsetting. I hope like PR agencies are listening to this episode right now, because I feel like if you are going to pitch yourself to a podcast, I think the relationship needs to be built beforehand, the trust, the relationship, before you even think about cross-pollinating audiences. Like I think there needs to be this genuine, I don't know, energetic exchange of like, yes, connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just so refreshing that you've said that, because we've always been really frustrated with that. But it's really good to hear there are people out there like you who are like, don't do it. It's icky. Like, let's do it this way.
If you're listening and you're thinking of being on a podcast, like you just said, follow them on the Instagram, you reach out, you support them for months and months and months first before you put that pitch out. We want to know that you've actually listened to our podcast. You're there supporting us in the quieter days and the viral days. But it is so important to build that relationship, which again is PR, because, you want PR from us. Well, you actually have to do the groundwork to earn the PR. Because quite often what we're giving you access to is a bigger audience or a platform, or our audience we've spent so much time cultivating and growing and learning from. It's quite a big thing for us to put our authority to you. So it stands to reason that you've got to actually build the relationship with us to get to that point.
Yeah. I have another question for you while we're on the topic of podcasts. What is your opinion around people who jump on a podcast as a guest and then don't share it, or they kind of like don't want to expose their audience to someone that they've connected with, whereas that person's, okay, let's just say ours, like our audience has been exposed to someone like the reason we love this podcast is because it does allow us to have great conversations with people like yourself. We get to expand our network at the same time. It's kind of like a really beautiful relationship. Our audience get value. But we have had a lot of people who have jumped on the podcast. We've had epic conversations and it's just like crickets from them afterwards. Would you say that is bad PR?
I found this very interesting, and I learned the hard way as well. I did that, and I was getting, because I've got an audience of over 55,000, and I've also got a PR audience that I sometimes share to as well. And I was getting quite frustrated, same as you. So this season of my podcast, which I spoke about off air, I had a lot of big names on. I actually made them sign contracts saying, in exchange for being on my platform and my podcast, it is a requirement that you share and collaborate on a post. So maybe that's because I noticed obviously I didn't receive anything from you on that space, but that's something you could implement, that it is part of the agreement. It is an exchange, and as an exchange, because also I think people don't understand the effort you're going to put into editing this, creating shorts, all the rest of it. That takes so much time, not just the hour that you're listening to right now. It takes additional hours after that. So I think that's a huge thing. I've had that before, and I found it so insulting. And I was really like, oh my God, how disrespectful that you've not only wasted my time, but I feel like I've been used.
Yeah.
Not a nice feeling. So immediately, again, bad public relations for them, and you never know the ricochet of that. So I think I just like to be very transparent. If people are on my podcast, this is what my expectations are, and if you are not willing to share it afterwards because you don't want to ruin your aesthetic or whatever it may be, then let's just opt out of this before we even waste each other's time. As you can see, 18 years, 19 years later, I'm very direct. This is what I want.
I love it.
This is what I expect, but I like to put it in writing, and it's a really friendly email template I just have that I send out and say, okay, here we go.
It's such a good idea. It's so funny. Like Loz and I have had this podcast now for over 6 years, and you still learn something every day. Like we've not had that happen very often, maybe once or twice. But yeah, it does. You're still learning. Every day in business is a school day. I feel like.
Yeah, and look, there might be someone might not like the cover, but then you could send them a copy. And if they're upfront and say, okay, but I want to control the cover or the creative
Totally.
outlet of it, okay, well, let's do it this way. It doesn't have to be a collaboration post. So
Yeah.
I think once you're upfront with them, there's a lot of options for that. But yeah, the few people
Yeah.
that do it are very disrespectful, I find.
Yeah. Okay. It's not just a me thing.
No,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all.
Okay, so well, moving away from podcast and PR stuff, I want to learn a little bit more about like what goes on in the mind of someone like yourself. So take us through like what you think maybe three major moves you've made in the did you say 18 years you've been in business?
Nearly
What
19.
phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank
What would you say like three big moves would have been for you that have really made the difference in creating, the business that you have today?
Yeah, I think no excuses is number one. I teach this a lot in my coaching program. So no excuses. There is a way. You just need to be resilient enough to find it. So example, I've got a great client. We were pitching to the media this morning. I clocked up 18 media pitches, which is unheard of. 18 media pitches
Wow.
in the last 2 days. And I was determined to get that client. And in Western Australia, we have such a small media outlet. But I
Yeah.
just kept going. I was like, right, who else can I? So I used every contact. And of course, just before I jumped on here, we got an amazing feature, but it took 18 pitches. And if it's
Yeah.
taken 100, I would have kept going. Don't worry about that. So no excuses. There's always a way. You have to have resilience to be a business owner. And the more
Yeah.
resilience you can have, the better you're going to be. So that would be the first one. And that kind of leads into the second one is it doesn't matter where you come from or what your background is. If you want to go on and start a PR and marketing agency, or you want to start a podcast, or you want to be a hairdresser when you're 50, go and do it. There is no
Yeah.
one stopping you except for usually you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the biggest thing. There's a lot of, not a lot of women have a lot of self-belief, and I think
Yeah.
that's a huge thing. So if you're someone like that, get around a mentor, get around someone that is going to hold you accountable and push you. I do a few clients mentoring, but I can honestly say the biggest thing I mentor them on is you've got this, keep going. Like, don't stop. They're phenomenal, but they just need someone in their back pocket. So if that's something someone listening struggles with, get a cheerleader in your back pocket. And if you have to pay them, that's totally fine as well.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing, I have 4 children under 10, so it's kind of hectic. And I think the biggest thing, again, that lays into that, the support, the mental load of women, we take on so much. And then we're also running a business. And it's
Yeah.
crazy and it's hectic. So I've recently, in the last few weeks, I was posting every single day, multiple times a day, but life just got too hectic for me. So I went to posting 1 time a week. And you know what? My business has thrived. You honestly would think it would go backwards, but it actually had the opposite effect. So it's really interesting. We feel mentally obliged to keep showing up on social media. But if you get to a place where you need to stop something, that's the first thing I think you should step back from and just focus on building your business. And don't worry about that social impact there for a while, because that is the biggest drainer and mental drainer that we see coming through in women that own businesses. Is not just running the business, it's the obligation to feel like we need to show up on social media, even if times are
Yeah.
tough.
I agree. I agree with that so much. Liz and I mentor women in business and think particularly moms, what they struggle with the most is the balance of like, how am I meant to like be a really good mom, be present, cook dinner, make like sure the house is clean. And then on the other side, I'm like this kick-ass like boss babe who's killing it and posting every day and keeping up with customer relations and blah, blah, blah. And we always say the same thing as well. It's just like, take a step back, like come back to what your values are. What's the most important? Is it a season of like going all in and giving it everything you've got? Or is it a season of, yeah, I suppose just like maybe it's more of a mum season than it is of like a business building season, and seasons come and go. Like sometimes we are posting every day and that's the season we're in. And other times it's once a week and that's the season we're in. I think just honoring that is
Yeah,
so regulating for a woman's nervous system.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So what has been, do you feel, your biggest fail, or maybe not a fail, or a lesson that you've had in business over the last 19-ish years?
Yeah, so there was a stage, I think it was around 2017. I decided I was going to publish a print magazine. Again, zero background in it, just thought it was a fabulous idea. So I put out on social media because I have this thing to make, I know myself very well, to make me go through with something and publicly validate it because then it holds me accountable.
Yeah.
So I put out this big post because back then there was no reels saying, I'm going to do a published magazine. It's going to be a beautiful print magazine. And everyone was like, this is amazing. And, there was 40,000 people saying, oh, we'd love to be part of it. I also said there would be no advertising in it because I wanted it to be about the women highlighting their business. And it was all wonderful and everyone was so excited. So the next day I got up and started getting quotes and it looked like I was going to need 15 grand an issue to print this
Wow.
magazine and just get it to the point where it could actually be stocked in news agencies and things. And I just about died. I didn't have that capital.
Wow.
So never one to back down from a challenge. I thought, how am I going to raise funds for this $15,000 for this first edition so that I didn't have to take on advertising in it? So I was very creative. I decided to create a membership. And when you signed up to the membership, which was $600, it guaranteed you a spot in the magazine. And within, 24 hours of launching that, I had enough for 2 issues. So I raised enough
Wow.
capital to actually go forward. So although that could have been the complete undoing of me and I could have ended up in financial debt, I was like, there's got to be a way that I can generate income to cover this idea. So that was, I guess, probably one of the toughest spots I've ever been in, but the solution was wonderful. And then I got to feature 100 women in this magazine, which was beautiful. And we did publish 2 editions,
Amazing.
but yeah, it wasn't viable going forward without advertising. And it just wasn't the path I really wanted to go down once I'd actually experienced it.
Yeah. You sound like me. You like tick the box and you're like, been there, done that, got the
Yeah.
t-shirt next.
Like, this is fun. If someone wants to fund it, if someone wants to fund a woman magazine, I am right behind it. I'd love to edit it and be part of it. But financially, we've seen the dismiss of so many magazines across Australia. And part of the reason is the financial backing required to get it to print production.
Outlay.
It's
Yeah.
just gigantic.
But isn't it amazing how a situation that could have been super stressful actually just got you really resourceful and creative and just like you found the answer. And I think it comes back to one of your biggest moves, which is never give up. It's,
Yeah,
that
solution.
mentality of like, I'm not backing down from this. Like, I'm not quitting here. Like, there's got to be a way. And I feel if we took that approach in all situations that weren't the greatest, I think we'd always come up with the answer or
You
some type
would.
of answer.
And reaching out to people. So if you're seeing someone doing something you want to be doing, just send them a message on Instagram and say, hey, I love what you're doing. Can I buy an hour of your time? Don't
Mm.
come into their inbox and saying, can we take
Can I
a
pick your brain?
coffee and pick your brain? I didn't work this hard to make you rich on something, you're building.
Yeah.
Be truthful. So I spend a lot of time going into people's inboxes and going, I love what you do. Would it be possible to buy an hour of your time so that I can just have a conversation around this idea? And I've never had a knockback. And some people are super famous, super high profile, and they're like, absolutely, here's the link to buy an hour of my time. So I
Yeah.
spend an hour with them, and it is such a worthwhile investment. It's one of the
Absolutely.
biggest strategies I do to get me where I want to be is go and find
Yeah.
someone that's done it before you and be respectful, invest in their
Of
time and
course.
just go and learn from them and ask them a few questions. You never know what they'll unlock or who they might even introduce you to.
I love that. I love that so much. What an amazing piece of advice. What do you think? Like, have you had to maybe shift some beliefs or do some like rewiring around, things that have blocked you in business to be where you are today, to have this type of mentality of like just resilience, get it done, I'm here to win? Do you feel like maybe the Nikki 19 years ago has had to go through some even identity shifts to get to where you are today?
I think when I was younger, I was even more resilient because I had no fear.
Mm.
So when you're
Ignorance on
23,
fire.
I failed. I've got the rest of my life to try other things. Whereas as I've got older, I've obviously got children, which obviously I need to be mindful of making sure I have the money to support them. Things just aren't as fluid. So you definitely don't take as big a risk. But I think probably the hardest time was when I was starting out in PR And obviously, I was disrupting the industry, and the traditional industry didn't like that because I'd come out of nowhere. I had no degree, and I was
Mhm.
scooping in and getting global brands to work with me. I was dominating social media, which none of them had even really looked at that stage. It was just starting to emerge. And so I actually, there's a very famous PR agent, 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬
Mhm.
and I'd heard about her and I noticed she was doing a masterclass in Sydney. So I literally said to my husband, I need to go to this. I have to find a way to go. And we had a brand new baby. He's like, just jump on the plane. So I jumped on the plane, went to it, and I sat in the front row. And I remember putting my hand up at question time and saying, oh, hi, I'm just starting out in PR. I've got no background. I've been asked to quote for something. I'm up against all these big agencies. I don't know what I'm doing. If you give me any advice. And she actually said, look, email me and I'll help you.
Wow, how amazing.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And she was phenomenally helpful. And that gave me the confidence because she was such an outstanding PR agency in that
Mhm.
space, that she would take the time to help me. And she just looked through things and said, yeah, if you do this and do this. And then in later years, I went on to work with her a little bit and her West Coast clients. And I think just having someone else believe in me that was in the industry and built a really phenomenal reputation, that gave me a huge amount of confidence that maybe I am disrupting it, maybe I'm doing it differently, but that's okay. That's what people were coming to me for because I didn't have that degree. I didn't know the standard way of doing things. So I had to do things how I thought needed to be done. And interestingly, now I think I've nearly had the agency about 7, 8 years. There's a lot more move to the way I do things now than there was
Oh,
originally.
yeah. Well, to be fair, like I don't follow many PR agencies as such, but you're the only one I know that has a personal brand aside from your agency, which I think is really smart.
Yeah.
Because if you're joining a PR agency, you want to be able to see that they actually know what they're talking about and they're like walking the talk. Well, they
Yeah.
walk, like they're doing it too. So
And they've got the same values. I think I'm very obviously opinionated and strong with what I share on social media and about my business background and what I've seen and learned. I'm not afraid to speak forward. So the PR client that comes into my world that signs with my agency has to be very comfortable with that. And some are not. Okay.
mhm,
So some are not, they don't want that. Some view it as such an asset to have me. But I'm very careful that on the PR Instagram account, if you look between the two, the PR Instagram account virtually never features me.
mhm,
There is not my face, maybe once every 3 or 4 months, but that is deliberate. Obviously, my personal brand is all about me. So
yeah,
the PR agency is used to PR the clients. And I
mhm,
think that is a blur we're seeing in the world between the personal brand and the business brand. I built a
mhm.
business first and then introduced a personal brand. And I feel like so many business owners are so focused on building their personal brand that it's at a disservice to their business. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
yeah, it does. Because
Yeah.
they're
So,
they're kind of like putting all their focus and energy on their personal brand, but really it's business reputation that they're needing to focus on
yes.
first.
Yes. And look, I always say a business we can sell. I can't sell my personal brand. So if I build a
Mhm,
phenomenal business and there becomes a point like with the hairdressing salon, I wanted to sell it, I could sell
mhm.
it. Same with the PR agency. And so we're seeing this rise of people that are really struggling with the juggle. But my advice is if you're doing that, maybe back off the personal brand for a while and focus on creating your business brand because it's a lot easier to attract clients and higher paying clients into a business that has a stellar reputation and you have all your focus on it.
Yeah,
A PR client is not going to want to pay you $60,000 if you're off speaking your personal brand 90% of the time.
totally. That is
So
so
you've
true.
got to have that balance. And when you're established, like I am now, then you can actually introduce your personal brand and actually focus on it because we have teams and we have people that support us create that.
Mhm.
But I just think at the startup, I'm just seeing so many people lose their way because they're so determined to set out this personal brand, but it's actually at a disservice to their actual business.
What would you say about people who like their personal brand is their business? I'm thinking of like service-based providers like
Coaching.
online coaches and things like that. What do you think they should focus on?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing with the coaching space. There's a lot of coaches that are startups teaching startups. Have you heard that comment before?
No, I haven't, but yeah, I get
Yeah.
it.
There's so many startups teaching startups. And
Mm,
what that means is there's so many coaches out there, in particular business coaches, that therefore have no background in business, but they're teaching. business.
do a business. Yeah.
And that is where everyone's coming very undone. And I've spoken about this publicly quite a lot. The coaching industry is not regulated in Australia, and I honestly think it should be. I really think it's a dangerous game. And a lot of these business coaches don't even have indemnity insurance, which is so vital. So if you're looking for a business coach or a mentor, first question always to say, do you have indemnity insurance? Because a coach or mentor worth investing in will have that without question. But I think, a coach, if you're looking for a coach and they're building this personal brand, you want to know what they've built besides their own coaching business, or depends what you're after. Like, I mean, I'm a mentor. I personally despise the word coaching, even though I will sometimes use it because of the whole industry. But a mentor generally comes from a background of building multiple businesses for multiple people. And then a coach is definitely more a structured thing. So it's usually a structure they follow for every single person that's repeated. Whereas a mentor doesn't do that. And mentor, you come to and say, this is what I'm dealing with right now. Client X, Y, and Z is being a nightmare. How do I get rid of them? And the mentor will say, oh, I've been through that before. Here's what I did in this situation and how is what I would recommend for you. So it's a slightly different thing. But coaching, back to your question about personal brand, I mean, coaching is a personal connection. So obviously it's keep going that way. But I think it's really important for coaches to build trust by sharing where they've come from before and what made them have enough credibility to coach someone else in business.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are getting burnt by the coaching space, particularly since there's been such an uprise in the space. Like anyone and everyone, willy-nilly can be a coach these days.
Absolutely.
And
it's terrifying.
I agree with that. I think you need to do your due diligence as well, though. I mean, I see how people can get sucked into very clever marketing and, maybe someone's showing up online with a phenomenal personal brand, but do they have the background? Do they have the experience? And I think that's the best difference. You mentioned it between coaching and mentoring. Mentoring means you've been there, you've done it, and you are actually giving guidance through experience. Whereas a coach, like the startups, teaching the startups, it's like, I'm figuring this out along the way. And you're
I don't
paying me
know. I
for
haven't
it.
been through that yet. Let me ask someone else. It's like, oh my God. And it's
I
also,
see it happening a lot.
a coach can give you and even though they're supposed to, they can give you a strategy and you implement it and it can disrupt your whole business. So you also need to be mindful of that you are if you're looking for a coach or mentor, they should be in your space. They should have been in that space for at least 4 to 5 years, in my opinion.
At a minimum, I believe.
To give you advice on how you should run your business, I think that's a huge thing. So, I mean, I personally prefer mentors because I like that they've walked the walk before us and we can learn from that.
Yeah, love it. You're talking my language. I'm mindful of time, but I do want to ask you one last question before we go into a rapid fire.
Ooh, excellent.
Have you ever felt like you wanted to quit?
All the
if
time.
you did, you have? Yeah. Why didn't you?
Because I don't think I'd adhere to a 9 to 5 job. I love the freedom, the flexibility, and the challenge. I view business as a game. I am so addicted to the game, and I win and I lose. And I get back up and I try again. So, if I started gambling, I'd be a hopeless gambler. I'm so addicted. But for me, my gambling is business. And I think every day there's a new challenge. Like this morning, 18 pictures. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to fix this? And then I had the breakthrough of a media coming back and going, we want to do this big story. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, classic win, like amazing.
Yeah.
But I love that Russian roulette. Love it. I'm so addicted to it. And I think if we view business as a game, we'll keep going. And that's what keeps me going. I really would struggle with the mundane of a 9 to 5 job that was just repetitive. I've got to be on that crazy wheel. I love it. I thrive under it. It's so my personality to just wake up each day and know I have no idea what the day ahead is going to hold.
Loz and I always say, like, you have to have like a bit of crazy in you to be a business owner. It's like embedded in your DNA. I don't know if you're like able to step into it. I think it's like intrinsically wired in you. You've got to be a bit psycho to
Absolutely,
you
do. And you have to be okay with being really uncomfortable because you're going to spend the rest of your business life uncomfortable because you don't know something or you're learning a new way and you're not quite sure if this is the right way. you have to get very comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, business is just like personal development disguised in a income producing asset. So I
So,
agree.
so true.
Okay, rapid fire question. Who are you celebrating or appreciating this week?
Oh, this is a good one. Um, my girlfriends. So I went out with them on the weekend and I have known them for 20 years. When I bought my salon, they were some of the first customers. And there's four of us. And back then, like one was a med student, one was just starting out in radio. And we've done this great journey, and it's just so nice to be able to still connect with them. And they knew me long before I had an Instagram account and all this, and they're so proud of me. But that is not the reason they are around me. They don't need
Yeah.
anything from me. They're just there because they're excited about my journey and have been on it for 20 years.
How good are girlfriends that just like actually love and support you for no other reason than because they love and support you, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I
You
hope
need more
everyone
people
has
like
that.
that in your world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another rapid fire question. What has been your most recent breakthrough?
Breakthrough. I think, you know what? It was speaking. So I had done a lot of speaking in the past and then had the last few years off. And then in January, Aaron Sassini just come into my DMs and said, would you like to speak on stage at this entrepreneur summit I'm doing? And look, between us, I wasn't even following him at that stage. I'd heard of him, but didn't know him that well. And I'm like, who is this guy with 1.2 million followers? And then I looked him up and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I loved his story and what he did. And yeah, I had the opportunity recently to speak on stage with him and Janine Ellis and a few other really key entrepreneurs. And that was just such a big breakthrough moment for me because I thought I love sharing my story. I love getting out there more. So it was just a really good breakthrough to realize that I've got to get back into speaking more and being on more podcasts and being, more opportunities to reach more women.
Yeah, saying yes to more. And back
Yeah.
to that in-person thing again, like,
Is exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. You have an opportunity to get in front of 700 business owners. Say yes without
yeah,
even thinking about it.
yeah, figure it out later.
Absolutely.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. I feel like we've covered so much ground over
Oh
the
my
last
God.
40 minutes. Um,
Fantastic.
it's been so much value and really cool to kind of like get in your brain and hear like what a phenomenal, successful businesswoman like yourself, how she thinks and behaves. And just want to thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I'm so excited for our audience to hear from you.
Oh.
Where can our audience find you? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the podcast. And I loved your questions. They were really interesting. I haven't been asked questions like that before. You think I would, but I actually haven't. So it was great to think a little bit left of center. But you can just find me on Instagram under Nikki Milne _. And then in my bio also has the PR agency if you want to check that out as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. It was such
Thank
a
you
good
for having me.
chat.
Oh, it was
And
wonderful. Thank you.
can't wait to continue following your journey. I love your content. So you'll see me there loving on your stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And if you are listening, let me know that you've heard the podcast by just sending me a little DM because I would love to hear what you thought of this amazing podcast where we shared so much insight.
I hope you're feeling inspired after that conversation and it's empowered you to make some amazing changes and choices in your life. Don't forget, let us know if you love this episode by giving us a 5-star review. It really helps to know that we're on the right track with serving you guys. And it also really supports our channel as well. If you head over to the link in our bio on Instagram, you'll get access to all of our goodies, including our signature 8-week container, her Renaissance. And don't forget, head over to the show notes. Make sure you check out any of the links, the books, or the references that we mentioned in this episode. And before we go, we just want to say thank you so much for being here, for being committed to your best self, and for showing up for you today. You are amazing. If you think that there is someone in your life that could really benefit from this episode, while you're feeling super inspired, please hit that share button, or you can share it on your Instagram. Make sure you tag us. We really want to empower others with our message and our purpose. So by you sharing, it just really helps us elevate that mission and message out to the world and really helps us to inspire more people. So head over to www.babestalkingbusiness.com. Check out all of our other podcast episodes, and we are sending you so much love. See you soon.